What's up, YouTube? How's it going? It's kind of a windy day outside. Pretty nice day, but still pretty windy. I'm gonna make a video about this book here, Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. So this is the first book in a trilogy. It's a fantasy trilogy, so like the story in this book takes place in a world that's very different from ours. It's like different kingdoms. It's kind of like a Game of Thrones slash like Lord of the Rings type story where it's in a different world. There's like some magic and stuff like that. So like there's things that wouldn't occur in our world happening in this world. So with this book, it's the first book in a trilogy called the Farseer Trilogy. And I recently finished reading the second book in this trilogy called Royal Assassin. And so just before I delve into that book, I just wanted to make a video about the first book, because when I read this first book, like maybe a little less than a year ago, I didn't have a YouTube channel, so I couldn't like make a video about this. But you know, just to give you a little bit of insight into the first book of the trilogy before I jump into what the second book of the trilogy is like, you know, just to give you guys a little background. So with this book, it takes place and it centers around this character named Fitz, specifically Fitz Chivalry. And Fitz, his situation is he is labeled in this book. You know, if you've watched like Game of Thrones or if you've read the Game of Thrones books, then you know that like, you know, Jon Snow is a bastard because his father Ned had, you know, him outside of his marriage. And that's the same thing with Fitz. He's in a similar situation where his dad was the prince of the kingdom. So Fitz's grandfather is the king, and then his dad, right, Fitz's father is the prince. So Fitz has royal blood, but he's the byproduct of an affair that his father had with another woman, so he's a bastard. So he technically isn't going to be in line to be the next king one day because he's the byproduct of that illegitimate relationship. With that being said, there's a lot of people who look down on Fitz. They kind of like criticize him and like, you know, belittle him because he's quote-unquote a bastard. And there's a lot of people who would think that he's now worthless, but the king, Fitz's grandfather, he sees potential in Fitz. He thinks that Fitz, because he has royal blood inside of him, if the king provides for his needs and helps him out, that he could actually make Fitz into a loyal assassin that could kill people for the king's will, for the king's desire. And hence that's why it's called Assassin's Apprentice, because this book and this whole trilogy focuses on Fitz, who's an assassin. Now Fitz, he's actually really young, so it's kind of like, you know, crazy to think how a kid who's so young could be an assassin, but that's where Fitz finds himself. He finds himself from a very young age being trained and being like mentally prepared to be an assassin who's going to kill people when it's time to do that for the king. Maybe there's some people who don't like the king or who are standing in the king's way of accomplishing some kind of goal. Fitz's job will one day be to kill those people. So this book is pretty interesting because it gives you like a insight or a glimpse into the life of this young boy as he's being trained for like a pretty brutal role or a pretty brutal job. So in this book, there's a magic called the skill, right? And the skill is this ability for people to like connect with others, right? Not everybody has it, as far as I know, but you know, it's kind of like you can connect with the minds of other people. You can send messages to other people through your mind. You can even know or connect to what they're feeling. And Fitz has that ability. He has the ability to use the wit, or another name for it that's similar is the skill. You know, because of this, Fitz has an ability to connect with animals through this magic, right? And there's a lot of people who look down on this ability. It's been like seen before in some people how they'll connect with animals, but the problem is sometimes the person loses their sense of who they are and they kind of like begin to like, I guess, forge themselves with the animal they're connected to. So Fitz, ever since he's a kid, he's been given over to this person named Burek, who's the stable master. And Burek is the person who's supposed to raise Fitz. So early on, Fitz forms a connection with this one dog named Nosy. But Burek sees the danger in that, so what he does is he takes the dog away from Fitz. And Fitz, you know, never sees that dog again. And it kind of like breaks his heart from an early age because it's like he wants to form these connections with these animals, but you know, people like Burek and others see it as dangerous and they try to remove any animal from Fitz so he doesn't get close. But through this book, he ends up connecting with another dog, and they form this like close bond, this close like relationship that he's able to feel what the dog is feeling. He can actually feel you know, he has this connection with this dog through this like magic. Another thing in the story is that Fitz is obviously, he's being trained to be an assassin, and his mentor, his trainer, is a guy named Shade. He's like a really old assassin who's been killing people for the king for a long time, and he engages with Fitz and trains him, trying to teach him what to do to be an assassin, teaches him how to kill people, how to be sneaky, how to be, you know, very subtle and secretive in what he's doing so people don't know he's an assassin, and just how to get the job done the right way, effectively, you know. So, so because Fitz is being trained to be the king's assassin, he's pretty close to the king. Every once in a while, the king will summon Fitz to go and talk with him and give him a rundown of what he's learning, of how he's developing, so that the king establishes a connection with Fitz, because he wants Fitz to be a loyal assassin to him. And so he provides for all of Fitz's needs. He gives him food and like a place to live and clothes and all that, as long as he'll serve the king loyally. Another important thing to mention is that Fitz's father's chivalry dies early in the book, right? So like, Fitz knows that he'll never really meet his father, and he knows that, like, you know, he's the bastard and things like that, but he's never gonna meet his father. So as he's growing up and he like hangs out in the city, he meets this girl named Molly, and Molly becomes like his love interest, right? She's like the girl that he really likes, that he wants to be with, but he doesn't tell her all of the secrets about himself. He doesn't tell her that he's really an assassin for the king, because he doesn't think she's going to be able to handle that information, handle that truth. And, you know, she just sees him as this kid who hangs out in the streets, and she calls him New Boy. That's like his nickname between her and some of their other friends in like the streets of like the kingdom, New Boy. And, you know, because of this, you know, Fitz, he never really like makes like a love move towards Molly. He gets like really close to her, but, you know, Molly's really busy because, you know, she works a lot. She has an alcoholic father who, like, you know, drinks all day and, like, you know, yells at her and like just mentally abuses her, and she has to kind of like provide for herself and like actually even like provide for her father. So she's in like a kind of like sticky situation like that. So they're cool, but like Fitz hasn't really made like much of a move in this book to like take that love interest to the next level. It's just kind of like a friendship that they have. Another important character in this book is the Fool, right? The Fool is like, you know, how it is in like a kingdom. You know, the king usually has like a jester. The jester being the person who, like, you know, wears like the funny like clown type outfits and like, you know, dances around and has like bells hanging from their hat, and they jingle them around, and they just kind of like do stupid stuff to make people laugh, right? But the Fool is someone who's very close to the king, and there's always this air of mystery around the Fool, around who he is, you know, what's his story, where does he come from. But he always talks to Fitz in riddles, and he always says things that it sounds like he's trying to pass on a deeper meaning to Fitz, but Fitz doesn't usually comprehend what the Fool is trying to tell him. He's just an important character to know because there's this mystery around him, and you get this feeling throughout the book and also in the next books that he's going to play a very big role in the plot, in terms of what Fitz learns about himself, in terms of what Fitz learns about like what his purpose is in serving the king and in serving the kingdom. So eventually Fitz gets to a point where he's being trained with the skill. He's being trained to use his magic better by this one guy named Galen. But this guy Galen, he hates Fitz. He like despises him. He always like trashes Fitz, and they get into like these arguments. So as time goes on, Fitz kind of just has a falling out with this person. They kind of end up just splitting their relationship together, and Fitz stops learning from this one guy, Galen. Another thing is that Fitz has these two uncles. One uncle is named Verity, and he technically is now the king in waiting. He's going to be the next one to become the king one day, since Fitz's father died, right? So Verity is going to be the next king that becomes the king, like once the current king dies. And then the other uncle that Fitz has is the younger brother of his father and Verity, which is Regal. And Regal's kind of like a jerk. He's like really like mean to Fitz, calls him bastard and stuff like that. So he's not like the best uncle in the world. So the way that this book ends is, you know, Verity, his father, the king, he wants Verity to get married so that, you know, Verity can have a queen in waiting, and that they can eventually produce an heir. which will be, you know, the prince once Verity becomes king, once the current king has passed away. So, you know, Verity can't be there, though, because he's busy with political stuff. So, you know, Burek and Fitz, they go to this mountain kingdom to meet with this woman named Ketrican, who's going to eventually become Verity's wife and his queen. And Regal is actually going to go to the mountain kingdom, and he's going to actually stand in Verity's place, since Verity can't be there. He's going to stand in Verity's place to, you know, basically like get married to Ketrican on Verity's behalf. One of the reasons why Verity can't be there is there's a very big problem throughout this book that deals with a threat to the kingdom. And that threat to the kingdom is there are these red ship raiders who go around and they go and they plummet and like pillage and like just destroy villages and towns. The thing is when these red ship raiders destroy all these villages, they end up infecting people with this thing where they become like zombies. They're like, you know, not really human anymore. They're called forged ones. And these forged ones are like people, but they're like in a zombie-like state. So it's like really difficult to like, you know, so they don't really feel like empathy or consideration. They're just like zombies who just want to like kill you and eat you, right? Kind of like some like Walking Dead type stuff. So Verity is trying to protect the kingdom from those forged ones. So while Fitz and Burek and Regal are all over there in the Mountain Kingdom getting ready to get Ketrican, who's going to be the woman from the Mountain Kingdom who goes and marries Verity, once they go to get her, Fitz actually begins to feel something not right. He realizes that something is wrong, and it turns out that Regal is actually trying to form a plot to kill his older brother Verity, because he wants to become the king, so he wants to get Verity out of the way so that he can claim the throne for himself once their father dies. So what Regal does is Regal ends up like using Galen, because the guy that Fitz has a bad relationship with, the guy who was trying to teach him how to use the magic, Regal uses Galen to try to zap Verity's life away using the wit or the skill. He's trying to like drain and kill Verity so that Verity will die, and then Regal can become king. But then Fitz actually becomes keen on all of this, and him and Burek, the guy who raises Fitz, they actually go to stop Regal. So what happens towards the end of the book is Fitz is poisoned, but he still ends up, you know, being able to save his life and like withstand the poison. He's almost drowned, and he's really beaten up in this fight with Regal, but he succeeds in being able to get away. So a long story short, the dog that Fitz thought was dead from his childhood, the one that Burek took away, is actually alive, and it finds its way to Fitz. And when Fitz is about to die with Regal, the dog actually comes in and saves Fitz's life. And unfortunately, it's kind of crazy that like at the very end of the story, they bring the dog back, but then the dog ends up like actually dying. Like right as you think like this dog's been dead the whole book, it comes back in the end, and then it ends up dying in the end. It's like, damn, this dog didn't get like much of a chance here, right? But long story short, like Fitz, by the end of the book, him and Burek are able to escape being killed by Regal, and now they know that Regal is actually plotting to kill Verity. And Regal tries to kill Fitz, but he does not succeed. And so now Fitz and Burek know that there's this plot to kill Verity, and that kind of sets up the pace or like the storyline for the next book, Royal Assassin, where now Fitz and Burek know this really big secret about Regal, that he wants to kill his brother Verity, and now it's like, okay, what are they going to do from this point on to save Verity's life, to make sure that they stop Regal from going further in his plan. So this book was a good first book in the trilogy. I really enjoyed it. It does a good job in getting into the minds of the characters and what they're going through and how they develop. Fitz is a cool like protagonist in this book. Having read the second book already, the second book does a good job of carrying on from where this one is. So just having given you guys a little bit of the background into the first book, we can now move on to the second book in the next video, which I'll be putting up shortly for you guys. I haven't read the third book in the trilogy though yet, so eventually when I get down to that, I can go ahead and finish the story off and, you know, talk about that. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, just giving you this brief little summary. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.